course, the long-awaited. Hi everybody, welcome to this video. This is the weekly Starseed Mission support, and this week we have, of course, the long-awaited conversation about the jab. And of course, as always, we want to take a higher vantage perspective on these topics, and I think that today's conversation is going to inspire a lot of people, whether you have gotten it or not, whether you want to or you don't. I know that there's a lot of divisive opinions that exist in the community at the moment, and so I really want to bring in this higher perspective, talking about the negative alien agenda and what this whole thing is about and why there is nanotech involved, what they're trying to do with the DNA. Um, and why it always just circles back to the starseed DNA and how powerful your starseed DNA really is. And when you really, really, really know how powerful your starseed DNA is, there's just absolutely no fear, around this thing or the current trajectory. And we're going to talk about the timeline shift as well. And so if you're tuning in for the first time, hi, I am Z EarthStar Healer. This is my channel. I am a light field geneticist from Andromeda that is embodied here on the Earth at this time. So I am a starseed. I am in connection with my galactic memories and my galactic skills. And for my skills as a galactic geneticist, I was called to support the Starseed Mission here on Earth at this time. And so a lot of you will recognize my voice, my energy, especially my songs. If you've heard the music, I usually like to sing a little bit in the beginning and the end of these videos, but as you can maybe tell, this particular video is pre-recorded due to internet issues. But anyway, some of you might recognize my being and my soul and my energy from upstairs before we incarnated on the planet. I know that a lot of star children will literally run towards me and be ready to leave to the private school without their parents because they feel like they recognize my being. And I get a lot of comments from you guys all the time saying that I'm so familiar to you, and there's a reason. If you recognize yourself or resonate with being a starseed as a being from maybe a different dimension or a solar system that is on the Earth at this time to support this evolutionary universal shift, then you may know me from upstairs, from before we incarnated, where I participated in the curation of packets of starseed DNA that many of us took to the Earth. And so, as a geneticist, interdimensional geneticist, that is, obviously, I'm going to have my own perspective of what's happening right now on the planet, and I'm really excited to dive into all of that. Swaying back to this video being pre-recorded, I'm probably in the chat box with you guys if you are tuning in live. Hey, what's up? Yes, the internet company is currently burying new fiber optic cables, and so my internet is kind of been really bad and will be until a week and a half from now. And so this video is pre-recorded, and I don't usually record these videos pre-recorded, and so I hope that this goes well. It's kind of weird that I'm just talking to nobody. I guess people in the future, but let's go and see where this takes us. Okay. So, before we get into any of the shenanigans that are unfolding on the Earth, I want to just give a brief background story on the current negative alien presence on the Earth. A lot of us have seen a lot of pretty terribly made fear-based documentaries on reptilians and things. Yes, reptilians are real, but the underlying current of what's happening in this current time cycle on the Earth, meaning in our current society, I think that one of the greatest negative alien race that is implicating upon humanity is actually the Zeta Reticuli. Now, many enlightened guardian races have been working with the Zeta Reticuli for a very long time, and so the majority of these beings have actually flipped and began to take ascension classes and began to receive support in the restoration of their DNA. However, there are still hundreds of thousands of these beings that are adamant about their original plan. And you've heard the story before. Who are the beings that destroyed their own time field or their own planet, and then somehow figure out a way via technology to get into our sphere, and since then have been trying to genetically manipulate humans through hybridization and through experimentation. And why are they so interested in human DNA? This is very important for our conversation, right? And the Zeta have been working with human governments for decades in these genetic modification programs. And it's funny because some of these human government officials believe that they're actually playing the Zeta by saying, okay, I'm going to agree to do what you say and you guys can give me the technology, but really they have no idea what the Zeta's real agenda is, which is manipulation and experimentation on human DNA. So why is human DNA so highly coveted? Why has the control over the earth and humanity been this massively highly organized process that obviously took a lot of energy and intention to create, this massive control system that we're seeing on the planet, where basically all 6 billion human beings were born into some form of a fallen matrix. How did that happen? And why is human DNA so highly coveted? Well, the Earth is a very extraordinary planet in this universal matrix and beyond. And some of you have heard about Stargates. Stargates are basically entrances to highway systems, right? So when you think about a major highway, major highways can have intersections that go off into all different other highways that can take you anywhere, right? Whereas smaller country roads don't take you to as many different cosmopolitan places. So the Earth happened to be a place where there are very high level stargates that go through all dimensionalities of creation, including beyond this universe. Okay, so this is very rare. There's not a lot of places in the universe where there are major stargate lines going out into these major constellations and galaxies and even beyond this universe. And so these stargates operate obviously interdimensionally, and this is how the original human and other beings that we hear, like Sasquatch and other elemental beings, they use these natural portal system on the planet to travel to other galaxies, other star systems, and other places on the Earth. Okay, so because the Earth has these super high level stargates that go into very extraordinary high level places even beyond this universe, obviously the control over these gates is highly coveted. Now this has been a Stargate war for a very, 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 very long time, and basically every single war that has occurred on this planet in the last 50,000 years has occurred from this desire to control and to access these stargates. Okay. And I also said 50,000 years, but time is a very strange thing to calculate, and so I'm actually hearing that is much, much, much longer than that in linear Earth time. So then let's talk about humans, the original humans that are seated here on this planet. As many of you, I'm sure, have heard that a lot of humans carry the star-seeded DNA of very, very, very many different star lineages and galactic families. And the reason for that is that our human being was literally intended to be a guardian of these stargates. And being a guardian of inter-universal stargates is not like a matrix job that you train for, right? There's just such a deep level of profound devotion and divine union and love that flows through that intention of a being that can journey and experience all dimensionalities of creation and even be a protector and a facilitator that can interact with this cross-universal and smaller stargates. So what allows a being to interact with planetary stargates and universal stargates is our DNA. So the thing is that modern humanity, modern science, and even these zeta reticuli, they don't really fully understand how complex and just how extraordinarily intelligent DNA truly is. And it kind of feels weird that, to my human self, that I'm speaking as an authority on this topic. I think this is the first time that my galactic aspect like collides into a very human issue here in the situation with the jab and how it is directly interacting with the DNA. So, as a star being, which every starseed is, I'm speaking as a reflection of an integrated star being, we have access to different dimensionalities of ourself. So this particular dimension aspect of myself is in the 7th dimension, and recently having spent a lot of time in Andromeda. Now, how life as a geneticist operates in the 7th dimension is very different than how 3D scientists perceive DNA, right? So basically, when we're connected to source and we are experiencing ourselves as this bewildered, joyful, perfect, benevolent piece of this unified divinity, and we become aware that we are an individuated form, we can basically make soul level decisions at that point, right? Every being can choose to follow that thread of love and follow a life stream of devotion and joy and love and co-creation with the unified divine creation. Or we can choose to, explore separation and fall off that thread of love, which most beings don't do, because it feels so good to be unified with divine love and to co-create with this magnificently benevolent and joyful, cosmic, divine, universal unity. So that's what it feels like in my being. And so for a very, 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 very long time, this soul spark has been following that spark of love. And I think that this will resonate for almost everyone here on this call, is this deep, unfathomable delight that when we say creation or we say God, we say universal unity, there's just this spark of joy, right? This love that emanates. So from that thread of love, we follow that through our soul's experiences, and eventually we come into our learning about the universal structures and how creation functions. And the more and more that your soul matures, the more responsibility and the more knowledge that is unveiled to the soul. And so DNA, the study of DNA, being a geneticist, is really actually quite a profound experience, because what we're actually doing is studying life itself. We're studying, the fabric of creation and the formation of matter from intent, from pure source. So this is a very profound and sacred knowledge, right? Because we understand that life is sacred. And so we're really trying to go from this angle of having so much love for unified creation and for all of life that we want to co-create from a place of absolute reverence and perfect knowledge. So from that place, then we begin to perceive reality broken down into these geometries or dimensionalities. And as intent filters down and densifies into the more dense realities, more individuation and more complications or complexities are created, right? And so then we realize that the human DNA, and this is something that, I have a pretty hard time in the New Age community. I have a hard time in the Starseed community sometimes, because I believe that the CIA has created many programs to specifically dilute and hijack and steer starseeds in the wrong direction by watering down truth, right? So you're really getting 10%. So I've been hearing people talk about DNA activation for 10 years or something. And in the beginning, this piqued my interest because I'm like, oh, that sounds like something I want to do. But then they'll just send you like a 20-minute soundtrack or something, and they don't actually explain to you what DNA activation really is. And for the most part, they're channeling or they're bringing through information. I think a lot of it, is well intended, but it just feels like it's not really the juicy information that the starseed is hungry for, right? So the DNA is very important because DNA not only carries the physical traits that a human or any life form or any reality or any planet or any universe there's all of these information or data that is in the structures or the geometry of time space, and that is really the DNA, the multidimensional DNA. There is so many dimensions of information that can be encoded in the DNA beyond just color of your eyes, the color of your hair, to the point of there can be interactive timeline activated parts of DNA where it's like a time release capsule, right? So you can encode a specific initiation into your hologram that say, until this thing occurs in the external reality, because everything is flowing, right? Time is not established. So when we were coming down here, we didn't know exactly how things were going to unfold because time has to occur naturally. And so while we know that the time capsule will complete itself and everything that we need to do will be completed, the exact way that things unfold is just much more powerful when synchronicity and when organic processes can unfurl, because then it's this organic, orgasmic expression of time. And so in order to make sure that we can interact with that, this is like our holographic experience of consciousness on our timelines, that it's like until certain factors are met, until certain energies are present in your environment, until certain spices are in the sauce, certain parts of the DNA are going to stay dormant. And this is true for all of humanity, but especially the starseeds, because whew, a lot. So a starseed, in my working definition of the word, and words are important because we're communicating about specific things. And so this is why when people say, well, aren't all people starseeds? Well, I want to make the differentiation, not to separate, but to make the distinction of bring awareness of the uniqueness and also the reality of your experience. This is like part of this activation. Because if we say, well, all people are starseeds, then you're going to be lost in saying, well, am I the same as people? Why do I feel different? Why have I always felt like a black sheep, right? So my working definition of a starseed is a soul spark that has come to the earth at this time for a specific mission. And there's very different many words for this mission, but I want to collapse it, right? This is really the Christos realignment mission, meaning we're reconnecting all dimensionalities of this universal matrix that has distorted or fallen from the source, fallen from its original divine template. And we're here in the 3D to basically create this cap in the capsule and to bring everything back into connection with unified divine source creation. Okay, and so I can feel the chills that is happening. For most starseeds, you don't even have to come from a different solar system. You could come from a different dimension. A lot of you never even have been in a physical incarnation before. These crystal children that are coming from the avatar realms, many of them are literally just, they say new individuations, but because they are in complete connection to the unity, really, it's like they carry all memories of all incarnations that the universe has taken, which is quite extraordinary. And so you're a being that's coming with this specific intention. You could even be a being that was born out of that universal intention. And so a starseed will often incarnate into more pristine or crystallized silicate DNA lineages that are their earth lineage. So this is why my channel and I connect deeply with this word EarthStar because the starseed phenomena, this story, oftentimes in the New Age community, it'll seem like this phenomenalized, sensationalized thing that it's almost cartoonish. And I'm just bringing through this really grounded, rooted, ancient energy of our connection to the earth because our star lineages have been working on the earth and with the earth for a really, really long time. And many of our star ancestors have actually seeded lines of DNA on the earth. And so, without that rooted earth connection, this is how they keep us from being anchored and being connected, right? This false light virus is like, oh, I miss home, and starseeds want to go home, and starseeds don't feel home here. And it's like, no. Actually, starseeds have been connected to this planet for billions of years, and every planet that is vibrating in the original divine source template will feel home, because that's what home is to a star being, to a cosmic master being. Okay, so we're just piercing through and doing the Jedi thing because, at this point, we're all bored. We're like, let's activate our DNA, let's get on with our mission. And the New Age community is just being bombarded, and it's not any starseed's fault. It's not any person's fault. It's really just this designed psychological warfare, right? That it's like they knew that the starseeds were going to wake up and make a big difference. So they really is an act of war on their part to create distortion and hijacking in our community. So it's time for us to truly wake up to that crystalline vision and pierce through these different things and remember that we're Jedis. So now we're talking about how so many star lineages, we're talking, Lyran, Sirian, Pleiadian, certain factions of Alpha Centauri, have brought their specific, perfected, unique genetic gifts and encoded into the human because, again, this planet has stargates into all of these different places, and in order to interact with these stargates, you need the right keys, so the DNA. And so, for example, my human body, I come from a lineage of Taoist masters. Now, my parents don't know anything about this, and I don't think my grandparents knew anything about this either. So it's been this really ancient lineage bloodline thing that has been lost. And many, many, many of you will resonate with what I'm saying about this. And here's why it's important. So when I started waking up to the DNA and like the starseed and the cosmic and the divine love and the unified field and all that stuff, it seemed like this very galactic star being knowledge. But then when my Taoist ancestors started visiting me, I realized that these teachings have been seeded on the planet in ancient times, just using different language, using different analogies, using different stories and different practices. But when those two parts of me met in the middle and realized that they were one and the same, this is really when I clicked into the humanness of my galactic experience. And this makes things grounded, makes things really real, makes things profound, right? A lot of this starry, glittery information that we get in the New Age system is very superficial in a lot of ways. They use all of the keywords, DNA, timelines, new earth, starseed, and it's like when you go into it, it's like there's no substance. And so we are unveiling the profoundness of our experience through our own experience of depth of our spiritual experience as a human being that's connected to a long lineage of these ancient teachings that we are incarnating back into as a starseed. Okay, so this original DNA and the indigo races are beings that actually carry from anywhere from 12 strands of DNA to 48 strands of DNA, and the 12-strand DNA corresponds to the 12 dimensionalities, but there's dimensions beyond that as well. So all human beings have the capacity to actually interact with the 12 12 dimensionalities of this reality and experience themselves as a Christed avatar being, aware of itself as a divine source emanation. Okay, all humans have the DNA template to access that. A lot of starseeds come in with way more advanced DNA templates because we just have, we needed just more source energy to be able to flow through our vessels, and we needed more computing power, and we needed more access to consciousness and to spatial awareness and all of those things to complete our mission and to be able to hold the space that we need to be holding on this planet. As far as reality creation, right? So our DNA really is capable of experiencing ourselves as a oneness with divinity. So this DNA can also access time space and, was designed to be a guardian of portals and stargates. And so this is our human inheritance, okay? The greatest technology ever created in all of the universe is literally our body, which has the capacity to be an anchor and a receiver and experiencer of the myriad dimensionalities of creation that is extraordinary. So I'm talking about these capabilities, these Siddhic powers, right? We've all heard these stories from all different cultures all over the world, of all different masters that have experienced these capacities like telepathy, telekinesis, walking through walls, teleportation, bilocation. All these stories have been told in all major lineages, not just, Tibetan, not just Taoist, not just Egypt, not just Native American, but basically all lineages of ancient culture. The reason for that is because our DNA is literally designed to do that. Now, the reason why these things sound ridiculous is because for the most part we were born into this false matrix that has severed itself from all higher dimensionalities, and so it exists in a skewed, falsely constructed reality where there's only 3 dimensions, only physicality. Most people inside of the false matrix believe that there's nothing beyond physicality. You are born into a body and you're the body, and then when you die there's nothing beyond, right? Which is ludicrous. And so, why is there a false matrix? Is specifically to sever humanity from our original sense of ourself and our true inheritance, which is our ability to interact with the Stargates. If the true guardians of the Stargates can completely forget that they are powerful and that they're creator beings and that they have access to these gates, then obviously the beings that are trying to hijack and control these gates can have a much easier time. And this is why we have major wars in the Middle East, in South America, and all these places, is because there are major portals and gateways that allow interdimensional cosmic energy in and allow us to journey out into the cosmic world. And due to this, there's military bases and all sorts of stuff that are trying to control these spaces, okay? So knowing that this is what our DNA is actually capable of, this is a perspective that I wanted to bring in because now it makes sense, right? Why are they so obsessed with, getting everybody to jab themselves? Why are they so obsessed with, we've been hearing a lot about this like DNA, RNA stuff. And the thing is that there is an intention to, there's a couple things going on, right? There's a hybridization process where these zeta reticuli, because they're lost, they want to use this the capability of human DNA, so they're trying to splice and do this hybridization thing, which is not going to work. Or they're trying to single out or edit the genes to interact with the Stargates. And the vision I'm getting is like, sometimes in movies, in action movies, they'll be like reconning around a military base or something, and there'll be a door that needs a fingerprint, and so they'll like knock a guy out and just put his finger on the gate. So this is kind of like what's happening with the Stargates. It's like, well, if they can't use these Stargates to go home or be in control of this time sphere, then at least they can just grab humanity's hand and open the gate, right? So now the thing is that DNA is a very highly complex thing. As I said, in order to have full access to this knowledge of creation, you would need to go through very many initiations and lifetimes of training and growing as a soul. And the way that you do that is by following that thread of love that we were talking about in the beginning of our video, right? This joy and devotion and unity with creation, this co-creational energy. So this is the cultivation of our master energy, right? Of our avatar consciousness. And so for the Zeta Reticuli, they did not gain access to the knowledge of DNA and the knowledge of creating technology through that organic path of soul cultivation. I'm not exactly sure how they got, this key to genetic manipulation, but I did see in a journey one time that, this key was stolen. And so, let's take a brief pause. Okay, so because they don't really fully understand DNA, and because then, oftentimes when a species get to this place where they feel like because they have technology that somehow they are more powerful than God, they can get arrogant, right? And it seems like, and this is why I'm not really worried. I know that there's a lot of people in the community that's like, oh no, my family or my mom, got the jab and now they're all gonna die. And it's like, I think that we shouldn't underestimate the power of ourself and our work here. Like, if all of this was just for nothing and, oh yeah, there's a timeline, now everybody's gonna die and the AI is gonna take over, we're severely underestimating not only the power of our own being here on the ground, but we're also just ridiculously underestimating the power of the intent of the divine unity, or God, or our collective unity, oneness energy of the whole universe. And it's silly to even say that, right? So there's certain things that look certain way in the 3D that seem ridiculous, and what they want is for us to say, well, right, and it's like the vantage point brings in the power. The perspective brings in the power, because if you are a highly advanced being that has access to high levels of creator consciousness, and you have complicated and advanced, let's say, DNA template, meaning you can actually access more of that creator power through your body, when an information is coming at you and they're saying, well, you should be afraid of this thing, you should be afraid of this artificial technology that's going to take your power away from you, without the awareness of how profound your DNA and your consciousness really is, of course you're going to recoil and say, well, no, this thing seems really powerful. But if you really knew the power of your indigo DNA, then, really, you'll realize that the fear is actually trying to get you to let go of that power, which you will do if you go and slip into the fear, right? And so, take a brief pause. Okay, I want to talk about the timeline shift here, because what it feels like to me, I know that over the last month or two, my being has been receiving a lot more training, a lot more filaments of my soul's fragments into my body, into my embodiment. And so I'm literally starting to, get really serious about my practices. And, my guys are saying I need to be doing 6 hours a day where I'm just going up, connecting with my template, activating my template. And this is all the stuff that we're going to get into in the EarthStar Academy, which is literally built for the starseeds. Okay? All of those beings, all of you that are feeling in resonance with my energy, know that this school will always just be super affordable, and just like nothing else you've seen, because we don't operate in the false matrix paradigm. We just are here to do our job. We're here to support you to do your job. And a lot of this is by bringing through these practices and these frequencies that actually support you in coming into the activation of your full potential. Now, what that means is, a lot of us have um, weather control capabilities, and a lot of you are coming into that and saying, well, I made it rain one time. Well, how about making it rain on command when you are feeling it? And there's just a lot of advanced processes that we have to go through as a being, initiations, training, portals, and gates in our own being to actually wield those powers in responsibility. That's why a lot of us don't have access to those abilities all the time, is because we haven't gone through the initiations that prove to ourselves that we can be a responsible wielder of that level of power. Okay, so I want us to think about, hundreds of thousands of highly coded beings on this planet. All of you and hundreds of thousands of us around the planet. Okay? If all of us begin to really get serious about acknowledging ourselves as these highly powerful coded beings, and not skirting around it in our solar plexus, being like, I am great and I changed the weather one time, but then on a moment to moment basis we don't fully respect ourselves and our connection to creation, meaning we're not creating the right space around ourselves, the right time around ourselves to actually commit to the process of actualization. This is a remembrance of the ancient temple mystery schools, where we literally devoted our entire life and all of our time to the actualization of our potential. And this is just another initiation on our soul's path, where we don't get the convenience of that environment and that container being held for us now. We have to create that container for ourselves, which just proves to ourselves, how devoted our soul truly is to, and I'm starting to tear up, because this is the return and the bring back of the true original temples. Okay, so many of you are going to feel this emotion that's coming up at the fall of the temples. Well, the temples are still in the process of falling, or are still fallen, and what's not fallen is the template inside of your being, and the resurrection of that template inside of your being. And the resurrection of that template is the embodiment of mastery and these Siddhic powers that will come online once you go through the right passages of initiation. And so the reason I'm saying that is that a lot of times in New Age communities, like, timeline shift becomes this, again, something that takes away our power, because we're saying, oh, something outside of me, the sun, the ETs, the guardians, the earth is creating this timeline shift. I just gotta sit back, I'll just wait for the timeline shift. Okay? And in my personal experience, things are getting intense. Things are getting heated up. My guides, they were like, we let you grow to 27. You were able to be a child, and you could, party and go to festivals and do all these things. There's fun. And just daydream. And now you're 27. You're an adult. You're graduating. How does a mature priest or priestess, master being, spend their day? Right? And so what would happen if all these hundreds of thousands of highly coded beings really got serious with activating our DNA template? We would create just this incredible timeline shift. And this is what I'm sensing. It's like, this is what I'm experiencing as a pulse through my body, that this being, as a reflection of all of you guys in this room right now, we are initiating, we're pulsing out this timeline shift by shifting into this embodiment of power inside of our body, inside of our being, in our full remembrance of ourself and who we are, and the full empowerment of our connection with Creator, with creation, with the sacredness of all, of everything. Okay? Whew. Okay, let's see if there's anything that I missed. So, DNA activation is not a simple one module process. It's actually a multi-dimensional process that begins with, earth healing, karmic healing, lineage genetic healing, lineage curses, past life healing, density release. All of this is basically going to be level 1 of our school, the beginner initiates part of our school. And then the second part of that is beginning to activate our light body, allowing light frequencies, source creation energies to begin to flow through our body. And many of you, as you're watching this video, because these frequencies are flowing, this is really a transmission. If you're starting to feel like you're on mushrooms a little bit, that is the feeling of the light body, the consciousness beginning to activate, right? And then in the advanced section of our school, we're working with the specific parts of our light body anatomy, the axial tonal lines, the layers of our aura, the dimensionalities of our being, bringing through source frequencies through those specific pathways of our geometry, of our being, so that we are actually clicked in and aligned and activated to our source connected, highest source connected levels, right? This is like the mastery coming in, where not only are we saying, well, I think I'm from the Pleiades, we're experiencing and feeling our 12D aspects, 15D aspects clicked in and transmitting and creating reality from that integrated space. And this is really a mystery school that requires for us to break down these teachings, and of course this allows it to be accessible for everyone. So if you're just waking up and you're like, well, I don't even really know how to meditate, you can hop on this ramp and get to the advanced teachings by just learning about the basics and knowing that going to our 12 strand, 24 strand, 36 strand, 48 strand DNA full activation, right? We're interacting with the earth portals. We are bringing back the Stargates. There's a lot of people that say, oh, I work with the Stargates. And I'm like, oh, so, do you channel 12D energy? Do you know that you have these axial tonal lines on your body? No, don't know. So then, are you really actually interacting with the Stargate, or are you just, thinking that you are? And we're just moving into a whole different level of our own mastery, right? I have also in the past just driven around, and I think it's important for our being to get used to doing grid work. And there are just levels of our adepthood in doing this work that we are really stepping into owning, because this is what the reality is calling for, right? As far as these beings that are creating these, jabs or whatever, just know that when a being is flowing through source frequencies through the body, that's what holds the template. That's what actually holds the integrity of the DNA together. Now, because the earth is not just a dead thing, and there are fields of light, fields of consciousness, fields of sound that envelops everything. And this is why when you take a GMO plant, and if that plant is not being refreshed or manipulated or whatever, and you just throw it out in the field over several generations, if those GMO plants can actually make seed, they will actually just revert back to their original organic state, because the earth is creating a field around us, and this field is incredible. It's the vibration of perfect life. Okay? And that's why, so many life forms, they say, like, you have, however many percentages of shared DNA with a banana. And it's like, well, what is the shared resonance of life? It's these geometries that allow consciousness and divine energy to flow through for life to experience inside of this unified field of living creation. And so because the earth is a living resonance that is, really just holding this field of perfect life. And this is why working with the earth grids is so powerful. And when you restore your original template, and you begin to understand how you can work on a high level to restore the earth's template, then the earth is vibrating this sound frequency over in the world. Now, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is more powerful? An artificial technological implication of changing DNA, or literally all of life resonating for the DNA to be in its original state? Now, the DNA itself has